I've got 10 o'clock on the nose, so we're going to bring our meeting to order. We'll go to the first item in this case. Yes, sir.
Good
Number
morning.
one. Go ahead.
You wanna know?
Public hearing on fiscal year 2024-2025 millage rate.
Good morning, members of council,
Good morning.
mayor, and members of council. We are here for our first public hearing on the proposed FY25 budget. And presenting this morning is Ms. Rachel Brimby. Ms. Brimby has worked with the city previously. She is the Vice President of Government Services for JAT Consulting. She has been an interim finance director in multiple cities, and as I mentioned, has previously worked with us here in Fairburn as well. And so at this time, I'll ask Ms. Brimby to come forward and do our presentation for this morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I look forward to providing presentation prior to the public hearing for your fiscal year 2025 millage rate and answer any questions you may have. So I'd like to take a few moments and explain what the millage rate is and why it is important. Property taxes are calculated based on two components, the millage rate and the assessed value of the property. The millage rate is set by the city at a rate that is sufficient to maintain and support the maintenance and operations of the city. The millage rate is usually stated in dollars per thousand and is multiplied by the assessed value. So in the example on your slide, a millage rate of 8 mills is $8 per thousand of assessed value. So that's the millage rate. Let's talk about the assessed property values. The assessed values in the state of Georgia are 40% of the fair market value, and those are determined by the county tax assessor's office. The city of Fairburn does not determine the assessed value of properties in the city. Additionally, the Property Taxpayers Bill of Right provides for an appeal process if the owner does not agree with the assessed value of their property. So this slide, and I apologize for the size, but hopefully you've got it in front of you. This is going to provide you specific details about the digest levy and revenue details for the city of Fairburn. The first and third columns show the current homestead and non-homestead calculations for property tax. The second and fourth columns are the proposed millage rate. The proposed changes include the new millage rate of 9.6 mills, which is an increase of 1.5 mills, as well as an increase in the city's homestead exemption of $5,000 from $25,000 to $30,000. So we'll look at the calculation. For a non-homestead property, and both for non-homestead and homestead examples here, we are using a $200,000 valued property that produces an assessed value at 40% of $80,000. And so for the non-homestead properties, the impact is limited to the millage rate increase and represents an increase of approximately $120 annually and $10 per month. For homesteaded properties, the impact includes both the millage rate change and the exemption changes and represents an annual increase of $34.50 or $2.88 per month. I think it's important to note there here in the city of Fairburn, there's not been a millage increase for a decade, for 10 years. We've been very fortunate. It's also worth noting that this increase will generate an additional 2.1 approximately in revenues to help support and maintain the city's operations. So I want to say thank you for allowing me to present these facts and figures to you, and I look forward to any questions you may have and hearing from any constituents that are present.
Mr. City Administrator, would you do me a favor? Would you explain, and I mean, I know you explained to the council, would you explain it publicly in this case, the impact with House Bill 581 is how we ended up here today opposed to just explain that.
Absolutely, Mayor. In the most recent legislative session in the Gold Dome, the state legislature passed House Bill 581. The basics of that House bill is it places a limit on property tax valuations at 3%. It also has a couple of other provisions. One is an option of 1% sales tax that has to be agreed to at the county level. But it essentially caps property tax valuations at 3%. So what is the effect of that? Over the last decade, Fairburn, like most cities, has seen property valuations or property tax valuations go up as the value of properties has increased. So in other words, on that same $200,000 house, each year when the Fulton County tax assessor was placing a value on that property, that value would go up each year from 200 to something higher. And so as the value of the property increased, that generated additional tax revenue, even though there had been no millage rate increases. So if you look at that over 10 years, on average in Fairburn, that averaged about a 10% increase in tax revenues each year. Again, not based on a millage rate increase, but based on the value of the total property in the city of Fairburn. So when you cap that average of 10%, the state law, House Bill 581 now reduces that to 3%. And so that is what creates a difference in our revenues based on that House bill. And so generally speaking, that's about a 70% reduction over what we had been receiving in tax revenues each of the last 10 years. And again, I want to emphasize that that's a 10-year average. There were some years when it was higher, some years when it was slightly lower. COVID was a different period of time, but the average over those 10 years was 10%. That is now capped at 3%.
Okay. Members of council, go ahead, Ms.
Yeah,
Davis.
I just want for Mr. Phillips to clarify something for me, because I know, excuse me, this bill was so convoluted. It was written, I don't know. So my understanding, and I don't know if this is correct or not, so you can let me know, that the option was either the 3% increase or that sales tax, but the sales tax had to be agreed upon by all the cities, and if it was not agreed upon every single city, that it would just fail. Is that correct, or can you explain that a little bit better?
Yes, Councilwoman Davis, that is essentially correct. The 1% sales tax would have to be approved at the county level. So in our example, in Fulton County, there are 15 cities. Okay. And so it would take all 15 cities agreeing to that 1% sales tax for it to be implemented. So if one city or two cities or anything other than consensus is there, that would not be applicable. In other words, you couldn't pass that 1% without consensus of all 15 cities. For context, I will tell you probably the most recent example of a county-wide effort was our local option sales tax negotiations. I'll defer to the mayor to tell you how challenging that process was. It literally took us the better part of a year to come to some agreement. And fortunately, at the 11th hour, we were able to do that. That doesn't mean this would be the same thing, but past experience says that county-wide efforts sometimes take a significant process because not all cities are in the same circumstances and not all cities have the same perspective.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Any other member of the council has a question? Mr. Hudson? Oh, I can't tell.
Taking some notes. I think for me, where it lies at with the increase is always justifying the increase. We have a gap in how we have justified growth and how growth is measured in the city of Fairburn. For example, we are not using KPIs. We don't have a process in place where we actually in real time are tracking the expense of the tax dollar here in Fairburn. And so when you start to see and you talk about growth, what substantiates growth for the city of Fairburn? I see this on two sides. I do see that over a decade there has not been an increase in millage rate, but then I would think to say, what was the spending practices then? What were the level of salaries that we had in place then? How was the city able to manage not raising taxes is the information that is lacking for me today. We increased in staff significantly in the past 3 years. And when we lack to have those processes in place that tracks spending, that substantiates growth, that tells us how salaries, promotions, demotions, how those things are being managed, we then justify increase in taxes based off that data. And so I've met with constituents in 2 different ways since the last meeting. 1, a survey went out about the millage rate increase. 2, public feedback on Saturday with Civic in the city. And the questions that citizens are asking is, how are we managing the tax dollar? What are the data points? Where is the documentation to show how we are managing spending? Citizens have a right to know that, all the way down to, there was a joke cracked, that even all the way down to the purchase of a roll of toilet paper. Citizens have a right to know that. So as a council member and understanding public sector, I'm not a finance manager, but I do understand processes, policies, and protocols in place to get to a request. So I don't see that here. I don't see that we have taken those steps to really look at the spending. I know my colleague raised concern about being top-heavy, Councilman Whitmore, and I do support that. Like, what are the salaries that we have in place now, right? Can we justify them? And Malden and Jenkins was here. And in their presentation, they brought forth resources that the city could benefit from that's absent. And I think that when you don't have, where we need to spend some money is at the government advisory level. Implementing KPIs helps to enhance, creating dashboards to show how operations are doing in real time. When we plug into the KPI budgeting, performance-based budgeting, zero-based budgeting, that's not here. So I know economically that you could say 10 years has gone past and we need a millage rate increase. But then I have to go back to this government has been in place for a while and they did not need a millage rate increase because apparently that was some checks and balances that said that we can continue to manage. We've grown, right? We've grown in staff numbers. We've grown in terms of the amount of events that we're having. Where can we begin to be smart with the tax dollar? That this year may not be the year for this. And those are my concerns. I'm getting more feedback coming in because I know we got a long day. I don't want to exhaust myself today. So I just have to put those things out there for this administration. That raises a big red flag. That those are public sector one-on-one. That's what we have to have in place. And so I'll yield. Thank you.
Mr. Whitmore?
Thank you, Mayor. I think I've made my comments known during the budget process, and still, as of this date, there's still certain things that I'm waiting to review, and I still have some concerns. I said it publicly then. I'll continue saying it publicly until I'm able to review the things that I've asked to review. Yes, we have increased in staff. Yes, we have increased in new citizens here in our great city. Right? And yes, I understand what the bill did. We're going to lose. We're going to lose what, 70% of what we have been receiving. Yep. I understand that too. But now I want to see the balance ratio of with new citizens that we have coming in, paying X amount of taxes, and that aggregate added up to show me how it's going to differ from the loss of the 70%, right? That has not been presented. On top of that, I already stated, for the record, my concerns about being top-heavy, salaries, and a whole gamut. Still stand by that. I'm still looking forward for future conversations to be engaged in and to evaluate it. I too have received many, many phone calls. I've spoken to people face to face, and there's a concern. Yeah, I understand we have not raised the millage rate in 10 years. Bravo for the city of Fairburn. We've done a great job. We can still do a great job. We need to really look at the rapid growth that we have with staff, whether or not it's really necessary, whether or not it's justified, whether or not those salaries are justified. All of that culminates into me, for me, help me make my decision. And if I was to vote right now, I'm voting it down because of the lack of information.
Okay, anyone else?
I just had a follow-up for Councilman Whitmore. I just wanted to just clarify, because I'm right there with you. You're saying that you need to see the salaries and making sure that the salaries are justified, meaning experience, work performance, and all of those things. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so that goes back to what I said during our budget workshops. We have an HR department in place that does not do performance evaluations. So how do you justify promotions, demotions? How do you coach without data in place? How do you justify salary increases? I mean, how do we justify the performance of the tax dollar? So, like my colleague, if I was to take a vote right now, I will vote no, because we should know what the salaries are. The information that was requested, we all heard that. Every council member needs to see all salaries. We need to see salaries that include promotions. We need to see position changes. All of these things have to be justified in our spending. When we placed on the PowerPoint presentation $150,000 for the Fall Festival, that rang heavy in the community. Because when you think about that, you think about that this event is open to pretty much a lot of cities that are coming in. And so citizens want to know, how can we utilize that funding at that time to serve them in their city? Also, there's a question, how many Fairburn citizens do we know are participating in that festival, and to what extent? Those were some of the questions that are coming up. I have more. We got a long day, so I'll wait till later. But thank you, Councilman Whitmore, for that, because that is very valid. That talks about data and a perspective of performance evaluation and making sure that we are fiduciary responsible with the tax dollar. So I support you in that.
Mr. Heath?
I just have a comment. I know that we had, at one time, been losing a lot of personnel to other cities because they were willing to pay more. And so we got together in order to keep our law enforcement, our fire department, and other city workers here in jobs and staying with the city. We voted at that time to give raises to eliminate that possibility that they would be leaving us and going to another city. So I understand the complaints, Ms. Hudson and all, but that is the reason that the raises took place, was due to the fact that we were losing so many qualified people, like in law enforcement. A lot of them we had sent to the police academy to get their certification. It sent them to other classes, accident reconstruction and stuff like that. And we do a lot of investing in our personnel. So I agree that one raise in a 10-year period, and I've lived here all my life, is really something that I consider to be very minimal. When you look at the actual cost to the consumers, we'll say, here in the Fairburn. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Ms. Davis, then I'll speak.
Yes. I'm a little concerned here. I can understand wanting to see data on certain specifics and reference, but what I'm really puzzled about is at our retreat, when we started talking about the safety complex, I know it's probably it's a different title, but to move forward with that, and we had to increase design and all that stuff, I had a concern there because I thought we were moving too fast. But there were comments that, yes, let's do it, let's go forward, even with the expense of doing that and doing that design and stuff. So I had an issue there. Also, there are other things that we're doing. At Duncan Park, that road that's coming into Duncan Park, that is costing money. So it's like these are things that, you know, this safety complex is not just going to come out of the sky. And I know that we're doing some creative financing as it relates to that. So it's just, I don't know these concerns. I don't know, we didn't talk about these concerns at the retreat. And I know I was a little extremely concerned with even the idea of increasing a millage rate. But also I had to go back and look at that House bill and determine what restrictions the bill has placed on the cities, which there should be some restrictions, because there are some cities that use property tax as the first place to go for revenue. And I've had some really focused and concerned conversations with administration, Mr. Phillips,
Right.
in reference to making sure that if there is an increase, that it is definitely substantiated. And looking at all that we are doing, we're moving over to the educational complex. Pretty soon, I don't know when, we'll be moving over there. The upgrade of the buildings over there. So there's a lot going on, and it may appear to me that we're doing a lot. We're doing a lot too fast, but it's going to take money to do these things. So what I do appreciate is that I think with our conversations, we didn't go to 3%. We did 1.5% increase. And looking at all the things that's going on, that people are enjoying and liking, I think, and you know what my stand was on increasing the millage rate, I kind of understand the 1.5%, and I appreciate you going as low as you possibly could so we can do it. The fire station over there, we're doing it. I know that's paid, but then that's got to be staffed. So there's a lot that's going on. I can't even keep up with all the stuff that's going on. I missed the LCI community thing. It wasn't on my calendar. And so I think we can justify this 1.5%. And me saying that says a lot. And I really appreciate us being sensitive to our seniors too, and doing that. So I'm done.
Yeah, let me just say, ladies and gentlemen, again, Ms. Davis kind of summed it up to some degree for me, and that is there's a lot that we're doing as relates to, whether it be again, Fairburn Fall Festival, the third Fridays, all there are other events that we're doing that, in this case, they do cost money to do them to the level of excellence that we do them in. The other part is, ladies and gentlemen, that I want to make sure we don't lose sight of in this case, doing our audit, as well as we got an award from thanks to the former finance director, as it relates to the level of fiscal responsibility Fairburn have exemplified, which was very important to me as a person that's in the auditing industry. And so one of the things, as I looked at again, and I'm not going back and forth, I'm just going to give my comments on it, as it relates to a lot of the growth that is taking place, not just in the last 3 years. Actually, the growth started happening literally in late 2020 and 21. And so when I look at the number of personnel that did not have assistant directors or have any managerial help, there was 5 department heads that did not have any managerial help. And again, I'll name them later, probably later this evening during the other public hearing. But as a result of that, as a result of the growth that is happening, I'm talking about fast, almost overnight, the staff is still required to maintain a level of efficiency as it relates to a managerial perspective, to ensure that, number one, the stuff is being done in decent order. Number two, stuff is being done compliant with state law. Number 3 is being done in compliance with projected audits. And so, again, a lot of what we're doing, again, I make it no secret, like I said, again, I'm no different than you. I'm not happy about a tax increase, but the part that I don't want to make sure we lose sight of, in all the other areas that's been mentioned by both Mr. Hudson, Mr. Whitmore, and even Ms. Davis, these are areas, like I said, again, a lot of this was discussed at the retreat, but one of the things that we could not anticipate House Bill 581. I'm sorry, we had put ourselves in position financially so that we could address the growth, we could address the need of managerial oversight, we could address the unforeseen circumstances that may come up. But again, this bill, and in this case, nobody saw it coming. And so a couple of mayors called me right after it passed and asked me, was I aware of what the impact is going to do to our city? I said, yeah. I said, believe it or not, my finance director just told me last night, the day after it passed, and I said, I'm just blown away because, again, all the cities are going to have to make this decision, whether you realize it, ladies and gentlemen, all cities and counties, let me be real, all 159 counties, they've got this decision to make between now and next year. For every year that goes by that they don't address it, they're going to have to deal with it. It's going to get worse and worse. And again, that's not trying to say taboo to everybody. It's just, this is a conversation that I've had with several mayors, and as they talk about when they expect to bring it to council. My position is, anyone that knows me knows I don't believe in kicking the can down the road. Let's deal with it now. It's not like it's a problem that's going to go away. And so it's got to be addressed this year. And I'm not happy in any form or fashion that we're addressing this because of the efforts that's been made. And let me say publicly to our city council, members of this council for the last couple of years in particular, that have gone beyond the call of duty is to have candid conversations during our retreat as relates to what we need to do to maintain fiscal responsibility. And that's something that's been at the top of my agenda, and I make that no secret, and the members of the council can attest to that. Unfortunately, like I said, again, things happen. House Bill 541, I never saw it coming. And so, after 581. And so, a long story short, ladies and gentlemen, I just hope that what I'd like to do,
I still have more comments, sir.
Oh, yes, sir. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree, and this is the reason we have public debates. We have public debates because this is a democracy. We have public debates because while you have 7 people that are elected, each one of us may have a different viewpoint. And I can share with you that if I have a strong viewpoint about anything, I can articulate it to a point where even if I have council people that are on the fence of voting yay or nay, I feel confident I can get them over to my side because of the data that I have, the things that I'll be talking about, and looking at the history of the city over 10 years. all right? So we're talking about, yeah, every city is gonna have to make some hard decisions, check mark. I got that, all right? We talked about the fire station on Milam Road. That should have been done many years ago. Guess what? It's here. It's almost completed. Check mark. All right? Let's talk about the safety complex. And let's be real here. I ask every citizen to go down to the police department and take a look at that building, knowing that it is degrading every day. You go and you look at our fire department, and y'all know I'm a big advocate for first responders. Always have been, always will be. But we need that complex. And that's why it's up to the city administrator and the finance director to come back with a viable solution to get this done. And yes, at the retreat, when it was being presented as just a police station, I wholeheartedly disagree with that, because it's supposed to be a police, it's supposed to be a safety complex. And on top of that, anybody that knows anything about economy and finances, and you know that if you kick it down the road to do part now and part later, you don't have the economy of scale. You're going to be paying a lot more. So that's why I pushed to ensure that it's not just a police headquarters. It needs to be a safety complex. Check. We talk about the education complex. That was something that was our previous mayor's dream, and she brought it to fruition. God bless her soul. And we still have a building down there that the taxpayers are paying for that is not being utilized. Yes, we moved a lot of our offices down to the other building because Brunel is gone. Understand that. We spent, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, $500,000?
It was right at 400,000.
400, close to $500,000. And most of that was money that was saved because we had people that can do some of that work, right? But now, hey, let's be real. I go down there the other day, and I see some people working outside that building, and there's a bigger generator put out there, and they were digging. What are y'all doing? Did we have a fractured, broken pipe or something? Oh, no, we putting in a bigger generator, so now we're putting the piping into it. So now I ask the question, well, what happened to the other generator that we purchased? Was it insufficient to do what it was supposed to do? And if so, then that evaluation was flawed. I don't understand. I don't understand. I'm saying generator, you probably have a different word for it. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do. I just wanted to offer that that is not a replacement generator. That's the original one that was approved by council. So that wasn't replacing something that was too small or wasn't figured out correctly. That was the original generator as approved by council.
Okay, so the employees that were working on that shared a different version with me, but I'll have to take that as it may be, because you weren't here when I walked down there, because I would have walked straight up to your office, but also just to see them putting in that pipe work, because I understand that generator was in operation or was not in operation.
So it's adding a new generator so that in the event of
Power failure.
we would have the ability to have an emergency operations out of that building, maintain core services. If we lost power, if there were a storm, if there were any number of
Understood.
events, our emergency operations would be based out of that building, and so that's why that building has a generator. And again, we presented these. There's a generator on the fire station and utilities as well, because those are core services, so that in the event of something catastrophic, we could maintain basic services with those generators until power was restored.
Okay, so again, it goes back, yes, it did come before council, we approved it, all right, and thought everything was in place. We did have a failure during one of our third Fridays, and I understand that we had some staff that thought outside the box and made arrangements to have a generator brought down so we can go ahead and continue that event that night.
Yes, sir. That was a mobile generator that's separate from the one we're discussing. They bring those in specifically for those events, and so it's a mobile unit that's
I
just...
understand. The fact is it failed.
It did.
Theirs failed, and we had staff that thought outside the box and went and got something so we can get back up and running. That's my point. So we're on the same page, okay? But again, when you have the ability of staff to go and pull from other resources because of their corporate knowledge, and we got it back up and running. That's my point, which is one of the reasons why we said we wanted a backup generator, so when we lost power. So if I was mistaken by a second one, that's on me. That's based on the contractors that we had there that shared information when I asked questions. And I'm always asking questions. When you talk about the road to Duncan Park, and I'm doing these because I think those of us that are sitting up here that when this came up, even years ago, and we weren't able to do it, we all understand the importance of having another access into and out of the park, right? So that's something that we definitely have to do as well. And guess what? Every year that we push it down the road, it's going to cost us even more. All right, so this has been on the table for, at least to my knowledge, about 7 years now. And we're finally getting ready to do something, I believe. All right, that's Duncan Park, check. You're talking about assistant managers, the additional personnel, all those things that we talked about already, all right? To this date, I still don't have a full understanding of why it is at the number that it is at. And until I have that, I can't consciously think about raising the millage rate, and we still haven't in my opinion, I haven't done my due diligence to look at the way we have grown within staff. And I will still stand by the record to say we are top-heavy. We haven't brought in lower-level individuals. We are top-heavy. And I have examples. And maybe I'll use it tonight. Check. So yes, going back to the millage rate, which is the topic of discussion here this morning, and will be tonight. Whenever you're talking about going up, I understand we haven't done it in 10 years. We didn't do it under the previous administration and the administration before that one. But now we're talking about it, and we see we have to do it. But also keep in mind that we also put something in place within the past couple of years, which is we have more money going into the reserve than we ever have. So now you're reducing some of that tax-based money that's coming in and automatically putting it, what's the percentage, sir?
As approved, it was 35%.
35%. So we still have other areas that we can look at as well. We just took 35% of the tax-based money coming in to put in reserves. Do we need 35%? I don't know. But I don't want you to answer me now. I'm putting it out there because we're going up on the we want to go up on the millage rate, but we're not talking about all the things that's inclusive that has been approved throughout this process. And maybe we need to revisit it. We have an opportunity to do better. I want to do better. And I'm going to continue to stand. And God knows, Ms. Hudson, I had had no belief that we would ever agree on anything. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, this is real. I spent an hour on the phone with one young lady in one community to talk about just the increases with the trash pickup. And I think I was very good at articulating the position of the city and what would have happened if we continued to keep our previous vendor. It was going to go up greater than 50%. So I applaud staff for doing what they did, finding another vendor. And on top of that, Mr. Phillips, for the record, I am the one that called you and said, we do not have a contract with this new vendor yet. We have an opportunity to do what? Reduce what it's going to cost for our seniors. And on top of that, we're able to reduce it for everybody else. So if we take that same mandate, that same thought process, we can do it with the budget process. There's no reason why we can't. None whatsoever.
I need to follow up.
Go ahead, Ms. Hudson, then.
I don't get into the woods about agree or disagree. I get into where the facts and being objective. I think, as you said, this is a democratic process. So to that letter, we have to be very mindful that this is an institution. This is a public institution. And I could talk about institutions all day, especially in the public sector. We have to be mindful that operational assessments is evidence-based practice. And you cannot justify a millage increase if you cannot justify the process that you took to spend the taxpayer money. I also want to, give this comment to my colleague, Alex Heath. I'm not against raises, not against a millage rate increase. Public safety is a priority, and I've always said that. However, some questions that we have to consider. How did we use ARPA funding? Okay, did we really use it to the benefit that we could have got the biggest bang for our buck? Did we look at ARPA money as free money? Let's use it how we want to use it, and we'll worry about the repercussions later. There's a lot talked about at the retreat, but I don't think we were problem solving. We were being talked at. We didn't have stakeholders there. We didn't have GMA there. So we didn't have the hard conversations that I think that we should. We got a lot of information. I agree that the staff provided us with a lot of information. When we talk about public sector and finance management, what comes to mind is the public finance management system. It's a process of how governments manage public resources, including how they collect, allocate, spend, and account for them. To date, we don't have that in place. I'm not concerned about, we had great financial reporting. We did have some indicators in our audit that left room for improvement. So, we talk about spending, we're talking about growth. You have to substantiate growth. We as a council have to make those decisions. We don't make those decisions based off of hearsay. We don't make those decisions based off of how we feel. We make those decisions based off of the data. Data matters because it's the taxpayer money. And we don't have those systems in place. What I would like to hear from this administration is, how are you going to manage this increase? Now that you know that we don't have those systems in place, key performance indicators is not a factor in how we figure out anything in our process. How do we rate efficiencies? Because overall, I truly believe this is what Councilman Whitmore is saying. He said directly what he said, but overall, when I conceptualize that, We're talking about public sector management. That is 101. We can't get away from that. And so if this is the aha moment for Fairburn, let's get it right, let's get it together. Because we cannot expect the taxpayers to continue to fund the things that the administration want to have, and there's been no public input. The public wants input on community events. How do we do that, right? When we get them out there at the concerts, are we engaging them to find out what it is that they want, how we can serve them? Thank you. We got new trash. It increased for some it didn't. Utility rates went up, and now we want a millage rate increase, and we're not offering any services to our residents. We got street cleaning. That's one new service that I thought, but I don't know how much that costs. So that's where my comments go to. I'm not against, it's the responsibility of revenue to increase a millage rate. I am against increasing the millage rate without having the proper data and justification for how we are processing, how we are spending, how we are allocating, how we are collecting. That's basic public sector 101.
Ms. Davis, and then I'll open the public hearing. Go ahead.
Yes, yes, this will be really brief. First and foremost, I want to say that I appreciate the work that our administrators do. I think you have the educational background, the experience in government to make decisions. I think we've given you $50,000 where you can make decisions. I don't believe in micromanagement. I know some of the concerns that have been raised are legitimate. So if it is possible, is there some way we can graft or share why the 1.5% increase? To verify what we have done. And everybody wants a lot of things. And sometimes we don't think about what it's going to take to get there. And I'm, for one, is you don't go to the bucket of tax increases for revenue, number one. I've said we need to do creative financing. We need to do other financing. Don't look at that. I'm a business person. I ran a business for 10 years. In 2.5 years, that business went from $0 to $3.1 million. This is early 90s. I didn't have a bucket to go to supplement any of my expenses. I had to go out there and sell quality services to get that revenue. So I don't want, and I don't think it's my job to micromanage you, but I think we've heard everybody here, and I think if we can provide the information just to qualify or to in reference to this rate increase, then I think that will help some of my colleagues and will help our citizens in particular. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Members of council, I'd like to entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Motion's made and properly second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Is there anyone here wish to speak for or against the millage rate increase? Seeing none, can I entertain a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and properly second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. What's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, I don't have to, if I'm correct, Ms. Deputy City Clerk, I don't have to officially close.
At 6 o'clock PM, you will have another public hearing.
Just so for those watching at 6 o'clock, there will be another public hearing regarding this same matter tonight at 6 o'clock.
That's correct, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Did you have any other comments you wanted?
No, we have taken a lot of notes from this morning's session.
Okay.
And we'll be prepared to address some of those points that were made in this morning's discussion
Okay.
this evening.
Absolutely. Members of council, with that being said, can I entertain a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Motion is made and properly second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.